James Gunn knew exactly what he was doing by putting the goodest space boy/girl into Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3. Cosmo the Spacedog is a character that has drastically shot up in popularity over the past few years, and what's not to like? Dog? Awesome. Telekinetic powers? Awesome. Funny Russian accent? Awesome. While Cosmo is a female in the MCU, Cosmo is a male in the comics. She was first seen in Guardians of the Galaxy as part of the collector Tanelier Tivan's personal collection, then liberated and now helps run Nowhere, the space colony. Cosmo was also featured prominently in the insanely underrated 2021 Guardians of the Galaxy video game, which if you have not played, I recommend you go out and check out. I platinumed it on PlayStation, it was awesome. Today's video is going to cover the majority of Cosmo's time in comics from his introduction to what he's doing right now, as well as his powers and abilities. But first, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps make sure you continue to see our content, even if you want to skip a few shows or movies that we cover. Now let's rock and roll, a-holes! Cosmo the Spacedog was first shown in Nova Volume 4, Issue number 8, and was created by Andy Lanning, Dan Abnett, and Wellington Alves. Some light backstory here. This actual story follows the event Annihilation Conquest, which I discuss in length in my Adam Warlock video. All that you really need to know is that Nova, aka Richard Rider, becomes infected with the Phalanx techno-organic virus, a virus capable of turning organic matter into techno-organic matter so that it can be brought into the Phalanx Hive Collective. Kind of think of the Phalanx as like the Borg of the Marvel Universe. Richard finds himself at the beginning of the issue at the edge of space and time, where the laws of space and time kind of break down in an area known as the Rip. This issue opens with Richard Rider being transported from the Rip to a weird unidentified semi-organic structure with writing all over the walls. While trying to get his bearings, he runs into a semi-catatonic member of the Luminals named Suspenser. The Luminals are an extremely powerful superhero team from the planet Vol.3. The world mind computer Richard carries with him compares them to their equivalent of the Avengers from Earth. Suspenser attacks him and regresses into some kind of weird zombified state. After Richard defends himself, basically ending her, 3 other Luminals arrive and immediately attack him for assumingly, killing their friend. Richard, low on power and reeling from the Phalanx virus, is forced to flee and hides. After Richard finds an area to escape to, from out of the shadows comes a dog who's wearing a spacesuit and able to communicate with him in a Soviet accent through telepathy, so not something that you see every day. Richard is introduced to Cosmo, a Labrador Golden Retriever mix who happens to be able to communicate telepathically with him. Cosmo explains that the Rip has transported him inside of the severed head of a Celestial, much to Nova's shock, as the Celestials are no easy foes. Fun side note here, the celestial head that becomes Nowhere was actually decapitated by the cosmic god of symbiotes, a being named Null, using the first symbiote, All Black the Necrosword. The screen should have a link to our video on him if you want to check that out. Cosmo explains that they call this giant head Nowhere, a city at the end of creation. Beings of all species come here to study the Rip, but they are all currently in hiding since the Luminals arrived. The Luminals brought something with them that they've been trying to keep from killing the passengers of Nowhere. They have trapped it near the core of the station, but much like Suspenser, it affects the remaining members, turning them into zombified versions of themselves. The enemy that Richard now faces is the arch-nemesis of the Luminals, a creature called the Abyss. Issue 9 tells the conclusion of this story that sees Richard and Cosmo team up to stop the Abyss and an army of his zombies. Cosmo essentially saves the day by projecting a telekinetic force field, allowing Nova and the World Mind to interface with and fix the containment unit that houses the Abyss, trapping it again. As a thanks for saving Nowhere, Cosmo is able to provide passage to the Phalanx homeworld, where he hopes he can be free of the virus that infects him. Now that's a story for another day and has nothing to do with Cosmo, but Nova is eventually cured. Now, in terms of Cosmo's actual origins, we get his backstory from Star-Lord during the relaunched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Issue 1, which is like the main issue where the Guardians of the Galaxy first come together. It's like the big, relaunch of that property. We find out that Cosmo was a normal dog used in Russian spaceflight testing during the 1960s, whose ship got lost during that test flight. While we're not exactly clear how, it's believed that cosmic rays gave Cosmo his unique telepathic and telekinetic abilities, much like the Fantastic Four. Cosmo came to become the chief security advisor of Nowhere and allowed the Guardians to use Nowhere as their personal base of operations. He advised them on missions and was a major prominent character during the mega popular second volume of the series by Dan Abnett. Cosmo is also responsible directly for the formation of the Annihilators, one of, if not the most powerful cosmic teams in Marvel history. For a period of time, Star-Lord is believed to be dead after the events of a story called the Thanos Imperative, which saw both Richard Rider and Star-Lord trapped in the Cancerverse, a twisted version of our universe where death was eradicated. Star-Lord's initial dream when assembling his version of the Guardians of the Galaxy was to protect the Earth and universe from these large-scale cosmic wars like the Annihilation Wave, the Cancerverse, the Phalanx, blah blah blah. After multiple failed versions of the Guardians of the Galaxies, with a kind of rotating cast of different members making up the team, Star-Lord and Cosmo deduce that in reality they need heavier hitters, bigger guns, and stronger heroes. Cosmo assembles the Annihilators as part of what he believed to be Star-Lord's dying wish. He didn't die, but this is what he thought his dying wish was. Cosmo recruits the most powerful individuals he's aware of. The Annihilators team is comprised of Quasar, Ronan the Accuser, Gladiator, Beta Ray Bill, and Silver Surfer. All of these individuals initially decline, but Cosmo is able to convince them one by one. They settle on the name Annihilators after a phrase that Star-Lord used to describe the exact type of badasses needed to protect the galaxy. Now, since this point, over the last half-decade, Cosmo has been pretty closely intertwined with various members of the Guardians of the Galaxy and their stories. Most recently, Cosmo was featured in Annihilation Scourge Alpha and Omega, an event that saw Annihilus and the forces of the Negative Zone face off against the Sentry and the forces of the Cancerverse. This is a pretty wild cosmic event, and it's not very many issues. It's only like 6 total issues. But look at this. Look at all these cosmic characters, and you tell me that's not cool. You can't. Legally, you're not allowed. And that is about it for Cosmo's comic history. I hope you learned a lot, and I truly think that this character is probably going to be around as a supplemental character for a while in the MCU. Personally, I really like it when we lean into the absurdity of comics. I'd rather have that than the down-to-earth realism or grimdark universe that sometimes we see in other properties. I already live in the real world, it's grimdark enough. I'd rather have some fun when I go to the movies. As we've all been made well aware of, this is the last mainline Guardians of the Galaxy film, but that doesn't mean we may not get a reformed Annihilators team consisting entirely of different heroes using the same name, so that could happen next in the MCU. Who knows, we'll see. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe and comment and turn on those notifications. This has been Nick with Key Issues. Thank you again for watching, and remember the motto, Cosmo over everything.